Hi, I'm Lauren Turner, and I'm the assistant curator for the collection here at the Ackland Art Museum. Uh, Typically, every April, we are very proud and pleased to be able to display selected works by our graduating class of students in studio art receiving their Masters of Fine Arts degree. Unfortunately, because of just the state of the world right now, that's not something that we can do physically. But we were wanting to give everyone some idea as to what we had planned, because these 5 amazing artists have done so much good and creative work for their degree that we know would have been showcased in the exhibition. So I'm very pleased to announce that today we have Emily Hobgood Thomas, one of the 5 graduates. Hi, Emily.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate
Sure. And I want to also just give Emily some significant props here by saying that she is still in the midst of classes and thesis defense and probably teaching for your own students, right?
it.
So I really appreciate that you took the time to do this. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. This is really awesome what the Ackland is doing right now for us. I really appreciate it.
One day we'll just have to think about what would have been, but I do want to say that Emily is, as I mentioned, one of our current graduating students. You described yourself as a native of Morehead City, which I believe plays heavily into your practice, especially the effects of tourism on the socioeconomic world of Morehead City. And you also described yourself as an avid plant lover. I believe you have 2 that are racing for your favorites right now.
Yeah, I have a philodendron that I really like, and then a moss ball. Here, I can actually grab them off. For those of you who don't know, moss balls are what they sound like. They just sit and you change out their water once a week, and then over time they just grow larger, and then you can make more moss balls out of the singular one.
That's pretty awesome.
They're pretty cool. I really like them.
Yeah.
So yeah, here, let me just
Well,
hang
thank you for sharing with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I have about 30 plants at home.
Emily, before we had started this Zoom meeting, I'd asked you about your favorite work in the Ackland collection, because we're lucky that we have you guys right next door to us, which means the reverse. You're able to come and see our galleries anytime you like. And you did tell me some about what you would pick if you could borrow a work from our collection to take home. I believe you might want to talk some about it.
Yeah, I would love to.
Haha, an image.
Delightful. Yeah, so Wayne Thibault is one of my favorite artists and has been a huge inspiration of mine since undergraduate. I actually was fortunate enough to see his work during the final spring break I had of undergrad at the San Francisco MoMA. I saved up money to make that trek out there just to go to their MoMA. But I was really excited to see that Thibault was included in the collection at the Ackland, because this is actually one of my favorite pieces of all time by him. Just really into the color of the work. I studied painting in undergrad. I understand that this is a woodcut, but I see printmaking and painting so tied together in a lot of ways. So yeah, it's really delightful to see that the Ackland has one of these prints.
Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah. And one of the things I thought was interesting that you had mentioned to me beforehand is that you managed to collect one of his prints yourself, which was going to leave me to just put in a plug to everyone: buy artists' works. We have a lot of people graduating who are facing the job market, so.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But on that note, I figure we should talk more about the art that you've been making. I wondered if you wanted to speak for a minute about your practice generally.
Yeah, so as you said, I make work about Morehead City and the socioeconomic decline that the tourism industry has faced. And for those of you who don't know, Morehead City is my hometown, and that town is on the southern Outer Banks of North Carolina. It frequently gets hit by hurricanes, and our biggest industry is tourism. So when natural disasters or pandemics come into play, it really affects our local industry. And so what I've done during this project, which I call Transient Places, Future Nostalgia, as the full title, Transient Places for short, I have been going around and documenting various iterations of decline. So this image right here is from 3300 Arundel Street. I use I use addresses to title my work so that you get the sense of location. This is from a place called Morehead Motor Inn. And one of the most important facts about this place is that it's actually a 10-minute walk from my home. In the middle of my working on Transient Places, this place started being demolished. So I actually got to see the demolition as it was happening. So one day I would go out to shoot, or one weekend, because I had to travel between doing classes and teaching. I'd go down and I'd go to photograph one of the dilapidated rooms, only to find out they were totally gone. This is actually from the swimming pool inside of the motel that got drained. And so on a Instagram live stream, I actually documented this process further of having to climb down and what it's like to be on a demolition site, making the work. But here's actually a photo collage. I think about my work as a way of healing, per se. So when I collage something, it comes off, I use a base photograph, and here I'm using different elements of the photograph to collage back in, showing the damage that has been done, but also thinking about my responsibility to this place and making the work.
Thank you. One of the things that I've noticed about your works, and I think we have another one that we can show, is that the fact that they're these transient places, as you've titled them, means they're sort of encompassing both the pessimism of decay and the optimism of renewal. And I was wondering if you sort of like that ambiguity, or if you land more on one side than the other when you're really drawn to these sites.
Yeah, that's actually an excellent question, and something I take into consideration a lot with my work. I'm very much fascinated by the ambiguity. So this one is a photograph specifically. In my photograph practice, I'm often thinking about time as a cycle, or these locations as a cycle. Because time and light are so important to me when I make a photograph. I think it's really important that I stick to this element of ambiguity. So I take photographs of both construction and demolition here in this project. This is actually an abandoned door from a place that got shut down in 2015 due to a hurricane. And this door has just been sitting ever since. But what fascinated me about this moment specifically is the time as the layer of regrowth and the reclamation that the earth is starting to have in the process.
That's a really lovely observation. Thank you. And as I recall, when we had laid out the exhibition that was to be, we had examples of your work, both in terms of your more strict photography practice and in terms of your collage practice. I know that the work that's on screen right now, we had hoped to include. Could you describe some of the other works that we had planned on including? I know, for instance, there was a group of Polaroids that had been collaged.
Yeah. So there are various iterations to my practice. I make collages using Polaroid film from the modern day Fujifilm instant cameras. I also make collages like the previous slide that are made using Adobe Photoshop. And then I have the strict photographic images as well for my practice.
Thank you. For people watching who may not be as intimately acquainted as you and I, the sort of concept behind this year's exhibition, as developed by guest curator Sabotage, was something we had no idea would be so pertinent as we're recording this, but the concept and title of the exhibition was In Vulnerability. Not in vulnerability, but in, as in the state of vulnerability. And I wondered if in your discussions with Saba, if by having your work framed against this concept, if it caused you to look at it in any sort of different fashion.
Oh, for sure. Saba is just so profound with her words and how she describes things. And the research she put into the exhibition was outstanding. I've been a huge fan of Saba's since she exhibited at UNC Greensboro when I was still an undergrad. I think it was right after she earned her MFA from our program. And I've kind of followed her along ever since. So finding out Saba was going to be the guest curator for this show, I got so excited. But the way Saba talked about my work specifically was so eye-opening to my practice and made me realize the personal connection more so to my work. I tend to think of myself as a distant observer to my practice, whereas the invulnerability aspect made me realize how deeply personal the work was on a new level.
And I can hear that as you speak about it, the fact that you know the histories of the sites, that you know you have this recollection of how long the door was there. Like, you're definitely not just encountering these, it feels like you're definitely having a relationship with these sites.
Mm-hmm. And that's something I hope to be able to get across in my work as well. I think when I talk about the tourism industry, we get this idea of the tourist photograph, which is influenced by postcards in a lot of ways. And I hope to provide a more intimate lens of how we're viewing these places that serve for tourist destinations.
I think, yeah, that's a really interesting point, that we never focus on the sort of like less picturesque aspects of these places. One of the things I recall was that at one point you had your photographs titled by longitude and latitude.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, do you walk around like with a GPS coordinator, or just describing how you captured that?
I actually have in my camera bag, which is also just my everyday backpack at this point, I have about 5 different notebooks. So whenever I shoot a location, I'm paying attention to what number it is in the camera, so that I mark down in my notebook what that location is. So I actually find it by address, or with some of the places that have been abandoned and nobody seems to know the address. When I go in to Google Earth, that's when I start finding latitude and longitude as well as actual addresses for these locations. But because I know Morehead City so intimately, that's where I learned to drive, that's where I went to high school. I already know a lot of these streets.
Yeah.
So
have you thought about extending this investigation to other coastal towns?
I'm so glad you asked. I cannot wait for this pandemic to lift, because my next project after this is already planned. I'm going to go make work about Wilmington, North Carolina. I'd like to be able to eventually make work about the entire Outer Banks system because each town is so different. Wilmington and Morehead City I view as sister towns. So when Morehead City saw its first economic decline when Wilmington built a railroad out to Wrightsville Beach so that people could take a train over to the island. And then that's where Morehead City's first economic decline came from, because people started coming to Wilmington. You also have a really big class disparity between the two towns, which I find fascinating because Morehead City was only established about 30 years before Wrightsville Beach. And so as I work further on this project, I'm interested to see what happened that made Wilmington so much more popular. And I also have a personal connection to Wilmington. That's where my dad lives. And before I even lived in Morehead City, I used to travel down to Wilmington quite often. While I consider Morehead City my home, I was actually born in Fayetteville, which is about an hour and a half from Wilmington. And so I remember almost every weekend in the summer, we'd go see a family friend for the day. And that's where I learned to walk. And there's just so much history there that's untapped. And so I'm interested to see how our global pandemic plays out on our tourist industry as a whole. But I'm also interested in going and exploring other places too.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think it underscores one of the things that was going to be the theme of invulnerability, is that part of what makes us vulnerable and then allows us to move above that is our interconnectedness to each other. So this idea of one city thriving at the expense of another, I think really speaks to a lot of what we were trying to describe in this exhibition. In terms of graduation, I know you and all of the students are in a different world right now, and you don't get any sort of official ceremony, but since you're about to enter exams, I have a question for you.
All right.
What do the primary colors red and blue make?
Violet.
Congratulations, you have your MZA, your Master of Zoom Arts. I would play Pomp and Circumstance if I had it here, but I won't subject you to humming it. So.
What if I got that wrong? I teach color theory. Summer too.
And as a last question to leave you on, we started the discussion by talking about an artist that you love and who, I mean, I feel any artist that we love inevitably influences us. So in thinking of your other artistic influences, what has been your preferred hand washing song in the bathroom?
I don't know, it changes.
Oh, that's
so many times.
I need to change because I've gotten really sick of it.
So in my free time, I actually teach myself songs on the ukulele. And so one of my favorite things I've been doing to help kids that I watch is record covers of songs that they like on the ukulele and send it to them, or video chat and play it for them. I think the song that I've been playing a lot this week is actually the 10th anniversary edition of Neon Trees' song Animal. I think that's what it's called. So I run through the chorus twice right now. I don't time it per se. I just run through whatever chorus.
Yeah. We've all lost all sense of time and only think in terms of stanzas while we're washing our hands now.
Yeah, but others have included Blippi, who's a YouTube kid sensation. I know several Blippi songs. What else? I'm a big fan of Death Cab for Cutie, as you can see. I play a lot of kid-friendly covers for that. So whatever I'm learning that week for a kid is typically what I'm singing.
Well, thank you, because I know there's got to be a lot of people out there. We're needing to mix our selections up. So.
Some Blippi.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, and I wish you the best of fortune in your endeavors. I think you have a lot of wonderful things ahead of you, so congratulations.
Thank you so much, Lauren. It's been really great being in this interview with you.
And rock those exams.